Imagine the roundabout at the base of your brain that is purposively, proficiently, and beautifully made to redirect blood in times of crisis, and that's the elegance of the Circle of Willis. Hi, it's Dr. Ken, and welcome back to the series of discussion on the brain vascular system, whereby today we are talking about the Circle of Willis, the mastermind behind the circulation of the cerebral hemisphere. I don't think you guys got time to waste, and so let's get started. In the previous video, we've been talking about the anterior circulation and the posterior circulation, and so today we are going to see how this circulation combine to form something that is very, very important in the blood supply of the brain. So we already saw we have anterior circulation, which is made up by bilateral internal carotid artery, and then we had the posterior circulation that comes from the vertebral basilar system. Please take your time to go through the videos. And so the anterior circulation, the posterior circulation come together to form this anastomotic link. This link is what is called the Circle of Willis. It's what is called the Circle of Willis. So we had the anterior circulation here, and we have posterior circulation that they combine to form. So in summary, we can say that the anterior circulation is connected to the posterior circulation to complete a ring now, so as to complete a ring by the so-called the posterior communicating artery. Remember, the posterior communicating artery was the branch of the internal carotid artery, though some literature they say it branches from the posterior cerebral artery, but we maintained our stance on the anterior as the branch of the internal carotid artery. So that is how we form. But we have no problem. We had no problem in the posterior circulation because we had one vertebral artery we have one basilar artery that bifurcated to form two terminal branches, and so we don't have any problem with the posterior circulation that it is complete on the posterior side. But on the other side, on the anterior circulation, we didn't have. We had the anterior cerebral artery and the posterior cerebral artery that were not connected. So this connection is completed by the so-called anterior communicating artery. So we have anterior communicating artery that completes now the cycle, and now we call it the Circle of Willis. The Circle of Willis. So it's at the base of the brain, and then from this Circle of Willis, where we have blood supply to the rest of the cerebral hemispheres. The rest of the cerebral hemispheres. The blood supply from the cerebral hemisphere will come from this anastomotic ring, because we see all these major vessels, the major vessels that will supply the cerebral hemisphere, they meet at the Circle of Willis, and we see why is this Circle of Willis important? Why is it important at all? So that is what we call the Circle of Willis. So let's see what are the arteries that contribute to the Circle of Willis. So the arteries that contribute to the Circle of Willis, of course, let's trace. Don't get too confused. Let's trace. From the posterior circulation, we say we have the basilar artery, and then basilar artery was had bifurcated into two terminal branches: the posterior cerebral artery on this side and the posterior cerebral artery on the other side. So that has no problem. And then we know that the anterior circulation is connected to the posterior circulation by the posterior communicating artery. I've just said it as a branch of the internal carotid artery, so we have no problem with that. And then on this side, we know that we have the anterior cerebral artery, which is the branch of the internal carotid artery. We have the anterior cerebral artery, which is also a branch of the internal carotid artery. So sorry, this is the mistake. This arrow has to come from this point here. Sorry, it's a mistake. This is the territory of this is the anterior cerebral artery. So, and then we saw that the anterior cerebral artery, the two anterior cerebral artery were joined together by the anterior communicating artery. So anterior communicating artery, so that we have this anastomotic anastomotic ring, so it completes the ring. So we have this internal carotid artery, and then it terminates by forming anterior cerebral and middle cerebral. So anterior cerebral and middle cerebral artery. But I want you to notice that the middle cerebral artery, it is not in the ring. It is not in the ring. But the internal carotid artery is found in the Circle of Willis. So the middle cerebral artery is not included in the Circle of Willis. Does not take any part in the Circle of Willis, but the anterior cerebral, the internal carotid artery does. So all these together, like they form like a cycle or a ring of vessels, and that's what we call the Circle of Willis. That the Circle of Willis. We know that the major blood vessel that will supply the cerebral hemisphere would be called the cerebral arteries. So we have the anterior cerebral artery. The anterior cerebral artery, we see in the we have a separate video. We talk about all these arteries, but we have the posterior cerebral artery and the middle cerebral artery. So this will go to supply different parts of the of the cerebral hemisphere. So they meet here at the Circle of Willis. So why is it important to talk about the Circle of Willis? Well, the Circle of Willis, why is it important by at first place to have the Circle of Willis? So the Circle of Willis gives chance for opportunity for the collateral blood flow. I know you don't understand. I mean, really you understand by collateral blood flow, but it's an anastomotic ring. It is an anastomotic ring, and then in case of blockage, because it's an anastomotic ring. So in case of blockage of blood supply to one of the vessels, I mean, because it is the ring, the other vessel can take care of the territories that were supplied by a specific artery that is blocked. I know it's hard to understand, but assume we have like a blockage at this point here. At this point, remember I've told you this was supposed to be this is a anterior cerebral artery. So this arrow was meant to come here. So we have assume we have a damage, maybe a block at this point, and at the very initial point of the anterior cerebral artery. So which means on this side, which is the left side, we don't have enough supply by the anterior cerebral artery. So what happens is because it is a ring, we can have contribution from the other side, from the contralateral side, through the anterior communicating. Then the blood will flow all the way to this region that is not supplied, which is blocked, and to the region on the distal to the blockage. So this is why it is important to have the Circle of Willis, because it gives this opportunity for collateral blood flow in terms of in case of blockage of one of the blood vessels. So in another case, assume we have a blockage at this point of the posterior cerebral artery. We've blocked this point, and so the territory that was supplied by this part of the posterior cerebral artery would be in danger of infarction, of death, of infarction. So what happens is the part that when we broke this one, so the other part will be taken care by this anastomosis by posterior communicating artery, which comes from the internal carotid artery to the internal carotid artery to supply all this the part that is deficient of blood supply. So that's what we call that's why we say it is important to have this Circle of Willis. But I'll tell you what, that the cycle, not all of us have got the Circle of Willis. So according to science, the literatures, they say the Circle of Willis is complete. We have only 25 to 30% of population have got the complete Circle of Willis. So maybe you and I don't have the complete Circle of Willis, and so we don't get this opportunity, we don't get this offer of redirecting the blood in terms of blockage, and that's it. So we have anatomical variation, but where we don't have some of people don't have the Circle of Willis, they don't have the complete Circle of Willis. So you find like some arteries are missing or something. Yeah, so that is it from the discussion of the Circle of Willis. Don't forget to follow the next video, as we are going to discuss about the vascular territories of the major cerebral vessels, the posterior, anterior, and the middle cerebral artery. So don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, and don't forget to like, share, and comment, and also to follow, to subscribe on this channel, as we have been releasing these contents like this. So see you next time, guys.